Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paripad His Divine Grace of Charanara Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Sri Sri Gauranitai Ki Sri Sri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Sri Giriraj Govardhana Ki Govardhan Gama Ki Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 15, text 17. Aste vyaste pitamata mukidilapani. Shustahana kahi Prabhu apurva kahini. Aste vyaste pitamata mukidilapani. Sustahana kahe Prabhu apurva kahini. Aste vyaste, with great haste. Pitamata, both the parents. Muke, on the mouth. Dila, gave. Pani, water. Shushtahana, being revived. Kahe, says. Prabhu, the Lord. Apurva, something astonishing. Kahini, narration. Translation. After his father and mother sprinkled water on his mouth with great haste, the Lord revived and said something wonderful they had never heard before. The Lord said, Vishvarup took me away from here, and he requested me to accept the sannyas order. I replied to Vishvarup, I have my helpless father and mother, and also I am but a child. What do I know about the sannyas order of life? I'm reading a few extra verses here, Prabhus, as you may have understood. Later I shall become a householder and thus serve my parents, for this action will very much satisfy Lord Narayan and his wife, the goddess of fortune. Then Vishvarup returned me home and requested, offer thousands and thousands of obeisances to my mother Sachi Devi. In this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed various pastimes, but why he did so I cannot understand. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees will come to this world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees who come to this world are executing a mission, and therefore sometimes they act in a way that is very difficult to understand. It is said, therefore, Vaishnava Kriya Mudha Vignayat Bhujaya. Even if one is a very learned and intelligent scholar, he cannot understand the activities of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava accepts anything favorable for executing his mission, but foolish persons, not knowing the purpose of such exalted Vaishnavas, indulge in criticizing them. That is forbidden. Since no one can understand what a Vaishnava does for the purpose of executing his mission, to criticize such a Vaishnava is the offense called sadhu ninda. Amagyana timanandasya gananjana shalakaya chakshu unmalitam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langhayate gunim yatkripa tamaham vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. By the grace of my spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls, even a lame man can cross mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. So I'll just go back and read a couple more verses preceding these ones, everybody, just so we, the events leading up to this. A couple of verses here. My dear father and mother, the Lord said, it is very good that Vishvarupa has accepted the sannyas order, for thus he has delivered both his father's family and his mother's family. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu assured his parents that he would serve them, and thus the minds of his father and mother were satisfied. One day, yes, that is it. Just to give a little background to what's going on here. A dream that Mahaprabhu had, that his older brother Vishvarupa had appeared in, requesting he also accept the renounced order of life. But as we just read there, Mahaprabhu said he would stay in the Grihastha ashram and serve his parents, which of course he did for some time. So, wonderful festival yesterday, everyone, honouring Srila Prabhupada, and we've tried to collect some thoughts and write them down for today's class. It's a very important verse that Prabhupada has just quoted in that purport. Vaishnava kriya mudra vignaya bhujaya. Very difficult for, or impossible for, a conditioned soul to understand what to speak of the inner consciousness of a liberated soul or the Supreme Lord, even to understand exalted personalities' kriya, their actions and their mudra, their gestures, is impossible for a conditioned soul. Why Krishna does what he does, and why his pure unalloyed devotees do what they do in their different pastimes. And one pastime which came to mind when I read that was Lord Vamana Day. Very wonderful expansion of Krishna, still residing in the heavenly planets, in the abode of Indra, also known as Trivikram and Upendra. So, of course, pastime is there, which was misunderstood by, or actually it was understood by the family priest of Bali Maharaj, Sukracharya. Sukra means semen. So he was a seminal or Kula Guru, family priest of King Bali. And the Supreme Lord appeared there in a delightfully charming form as a young, innocent brahmachari. And Bali Maharaj, even though he appeared in so-called family of daityas or demons, he was actually a great devotee of the Lord, and he personifies the quality of absolute surrender, because out of affection, when this extremely attractive young boy appeared in his midst, he offered him whatever charity he would like. And of course, Lord Vamana Dev, he requested just 3 steps of land. So how much land can a 5-year-old boy step across? Not very much. So it seemed very insignificant. But Shukracharya, the family priest of King Bali, he understood. Don't give him anything. This is Vishnu. He'll take everything from you. So Bali acquiesced and understood, well, if he takes everything from me, all well and good, because he is the Supreme Lord. And in fact, of course, in the first two steps, Lord Trivikram, Vamana Dev, he did in fact traverse the entire universe. So, and he asked Bali, where do you want me to put my third step? And King Bali said, will you put it on, please place your lotus foot on my head. So the family priest, Shukracharya, was very much disturbed by this, because he was depending on the charity of the king for his and his family's maintenance. So he became, how will I be able to support my family now? My sponsor, the king, has just given away his entire kingdom to this dwarf Brahmin, Vamana Dev. So he became felt very much threatened by that. And of course, there's a wonderful pastime of Krishna being asked by one of his principal queens, Satyabhama. In fact, it's said in some Puranas that Satyabhama accompanied Krishna to Indra's abode, and whilst there, she requested her husband, you please arrange to bring back the Parijata, beautifully celestial flower bush, so that we can plant it in our gardens in Dwarka. And also the Sudama Assembly House, which is, and both these are found only in Indra's abode, Swargaloka, because it's a heavenly planet, and the personalities who reside there, they enjoy such special delights which aren't found on this lower planetary system. Our planet is known as Mrityuloka, which is sometimes described as the planet of death, or we can soften it a little bit by saying the planet where people don't live very long. So either way, whereas in the heavenly planets people live fabulous thousands of years, and the sense enjoyment there is far superior to here on Mrityuloka. So anyway, Krishna acquiesced to his wife's request, but Indra spoke down to Krishna, because he sees, even though Krishna is the original Swayam Bhagavan, he was seeing Krishna as his younger brother, because Upendra, Vamana Dev, is actually his younger brother. They're both brothers, born from the same father and mother, Mother Aditi and Kashyapa Muni. But Indra appeared first, so he sees Lord Vamana Dev as his younger brother, even though Lord Vamana Dev is Vishnu, the Supreme Lord. So he mildly rebuked Krishna when Krishna requested, I want to take this Parijata celestial flower-bearing tree back to my kingdom. And by the way, I'd also like to have the Sudama Assembly Hall. So there was a little bit of a, you could say, there was actually a fight. Indra actually mildly chastised Krishna and said, Krishna, I think you're becoming, due to the association of these earthly persons, not as evolved association as Indra enjoys in the heavenly planets. And also, Krishna, I think you're becoming a little henpecked by your wives. So many thousands of consorts. Of course, Krishna can have and does have unlimited consorts in different realms. So in this way, there was a little bit of a fight, but Krishna prevailed. Actually, Arjuna was with him on that momentous escapade to the heavenly planets, or journey, we should say. And it's interesting to note, speaking of Kashyapa Muni, that Prabhupada, when he visited Tehran in Iran, he commented that the Caspian Sea, which is not far, perhaps an hour or two's drive from the capital of Iran, was formerly the abode of Kashyapa Muni. Kashyapa Muni lived in that vicinity for some time. And those of us who have ever met Iranian people, they're really wonderful people. They look in many ways similar to very high-class Indian people, because we know Vedic culture was spread all around the world once upon a time. And the sad thing is, like in many countries, they're being subjugated by very bad governments. But the people themselves, as Prabhupada often noted, are primarily very innocent and just being misled by bad political leaders. So we have that wonderful pastime. And as Ram Prasad was describing so nicely in his class last Monday, Prabhupada was asked on one occasion by a scholar, what is the goal? And Prabhupada replied, to enjoy life. One man's food is another man's poison, the old English saying. So we're certainly, those of us on the Bhakti Marg, the path of devotion, we're certainly enjoying life. Otherwise, why would we be engaged in the lifestyle of aspiring devotees of Krishna? Because we're enjoying. And it's interesting, only recently, I always love that quote from Prabhupada, to enjoy life is the goal. And only recently I read in Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani, which a devotee friend gave me once, and it's a very exalted literature. You may know that Srila Rupa Goswami only touches on Madhurya Lila in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He wrote a separate book, more elaborately describing Madhurya Lila, conjugal loving affairs between Krishna and the Braja Gopis, and also the Lord's consorts in Mathura and Dwarka. And in there, Srila Rupa Goswami lists the 25 qualities of Srimati Radharani, and one of those is she knows how to enjoy life. I thought Prabhupada was wrong. So, and of course, we are encouraged to take shelter, follow in the footsteps of the great Ragatmika devotees of Krishna. Raga means attachment. And there are many, limited number of Ragatmika devotees of Krishna, eternal associates of whom there are only one. For example, there's only one Mother Jasoda. There's only one Nanda Maharaj. There's only one Srimati Radharani and Lalita or Vishaka and Subal and Sridham, Madhumangal and so on. So they're the Ragatmika Bhaktas, eternal associates of Krishna, but we're encouraged to take shelter of, and there are many, but not that many, the Raganuga Bhaktas, those who have developed some spontaneous love for Krishna. And on his last visit here, Dinabandhu Prabhu made an excellent point. He said, we are all following in the footsteps of the best Raganuga devotee of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, who himself resided in Sri Brajadam for at least 11 years before coming to the Western world, and prepared himself thoroughly. Of course, his whole lifetime in preparation was there, but especially those last 11 years when Prabhupada was living in his retired and renounced ashrams. And also it's interesting to note that Prabhupada, during his younger days, majored in certain subjects which would put him in very good stead for his future mission, both in his householder life, to be successful and maintain his family, do his duty there, but also after coming to the West. Of course, Prabhupada had never been out of India. but he studied English, philosophy and economics. They were his majors at university. And he would sometimes say that in economics you need four things. You need land, you need manpower, you need some wealth, startup capital if you like, and organisation. Those four things are critical. So Prabhupada said, when I was thinking, where should I go? He knew some of his godbrothers had already been to Europe in the 1930s. But times had changed, and they were very difficult years in between two great world wars and a Great Depression. So by the time Prabhupada was ready to come to the West in 1965, America had become the dominant world power. Fabulous wealth was coming about, technological progress, and of course Prabhupada entered right in at the perfect time, just as the counterculture, persons, young people dissatisfied with the life of materialism of their parents and grandparents were searching, and of course Prabhupada entered into that particular time in history, and the rest is history, as they say. And it's interesting historically how Sripad Shankaracharya established 4 monasteries, they're called, in the 4 different prominent directions of India. And of course from those original 4 monasteries, hundreds and thousands of other monasteries of followers of Advaitavad impersonalism have since evolved, but those 4 directions in the south, which is where Sripad Shankaracharya himself appeared, Sringeri, Badarik Ashram in the north, Dwarka in the west, and Jagannath Puri in the east. And I was talking to Ramai Maharaj the other morning, and he was recently back from India and going again to India shortly. And because he travels extensively as a GBC, he hears and personally sees the expansion of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement all over the world, Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON Society. So he was telling us how, and just to backtrack for a second, we did mean to mention that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he established 64 monasteries throughout the length and breadth of India, and also outside of India. In what was formerly known as Rangoon in Burma, he established a small preaching centre, and also in London. His disciples who went there did establish one centre. So 64 in total, so expanding. And Ramai Maharaj told me now in India there are 700 ISKCON temples just in India, and more being opened. I know everyone's looking up again. And more being established all the time. What to speak of the other ISKCON centres all around the world. 17 ISKCON centres just in Delhi, New Delhi, capital of India, Greater New Delhi. And of course here in Australia, Maharaj was giving us a little update that, as we know, I'm sure we're aware, starting early next year, the stage 1 of the 2-stage new temple for their lordships in the form of the commercial kitchen and larger prasadam dining hall will begin construction early next year. Should take about 6 months, very exciting. And of course after that, a new temple for their lordships, which some of you may know, this building that we're presently sitting in was built back in 1977, and it was only ever meant to be a temporary structure, so it's done well. And it's quite and the type of construction, an A-frame, Ram Prasad, quite a simple structure to construct. So it's served their lordships and all the devotees since 1977 very well, but now is the time for Radha Govardhana Dari Gauranitai, Krishna Balaram, Lord Giriraj to move to a new palace. So that will be coming in the years ahead. And Maharaj was explaining in Greater Sydney, in Western Sydney, I think we may know some of the devotees from Sydney, 4 acres of land has been purchased and construction going on there, and also North Sydney. The temple there is actually going to be demolished and a new temple built up from there. So, and Perth, and so many expanding products. Prabhupada did say when Krishna consciousness is ecstatic when it's expanding. So an expansion in the form of bricks and mortar is wonderful, but also expanding in our hearts in the form of anarta nivritti is very wonderful as well. The giving up of unwanted desires, which are impediments, stumbling blocks. Another old English phrase, I think, Srila Prabhupada was fond of using, stumbling blocks, hurdles on the path. So getting it to that point, it's quite a long way along the path from, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written his wonderful book, Madhurya Kadambini, from Shraddha to Prem. Along that path there are many, such as Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangasta Bhajana Kriya Tato Anarta Nivritti Shat Tato Nista Ruchistata. So there are many different stages from having a little faith in Krishna, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, associating with devotees, Sadhu Sangasta Bhajana Kriya, worshipping Krishna and taking initiation, Nishta, which means firm conviction. There are 2 words in that verse. The first one is Shraddha, which also means faith, and Nishta means firm conviction. Unflinching faith in something sublime is one of Prabhupada's definitions of the word Shraddha. So of course to get to that we know it's one has to be a little patient, and the anartas are very stubborn, unwanted bad habits. Our acharyas, especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami have written extensively on the 21 principal demons either banished by Krishna and Balaram, such as Kaliya, sent out of Braj, or liberated by Krishna and Balaram. 21 principal asuras or demoniac characters, and they have likened them to these different anartas, which we have to gradually get rid of. So, and that takes hard work. Spiritual life is hard work because they are described as impediments, and we know each one of them has their unique demoniac characteristics. For example, the first demoness liberated by Krishna, Putana, she personifies cheating sadhus, bogus sadhus, who come disguised but who are actually just going to plunder or even kill the spiritual life of their followers. And Dhanukasura, the ass demon, he personifies lust. So these wondrous pastimes are there in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, after we've become convinced by reading the other 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the Lord's wonderful pastimes are expanded upon in the 10th canto. So, let me just find it here. I wasn't sure which book I wrote it in. I think it's in this one. Because We came across these the other day and we thought, I have to make a note of these. So let's just see if we can find them here. I think we can. Hare Krishna. Maybe not. Let's press pause here for a moment. One. Might have to save it for the next class. We've got plenty more here to talk about. Oh, here we go. Yes. So the first one is pratishta. Pratishta means the desire for name and fame, to achieve a high position as a devotee. That's considered a real impediment, stumbling block. Obviously, desire for name and fame. That's the one that's quite often quoted as subtle sex desire. It's not gross, but we're still desiring to lord it over. And those two are famous there. The enjoying propensity and the controlling propensity. Ishwara bhav and Purush bhav. So they're stumbling blocks. Jiva himsa is another one, and that's described as envy of others. And Prabhupada gave a wonderful definition of a himsa, jiva himsa, and that is not preaching. Not preaching, not sharing our good fortune with others, not attempting in whatever way it may be, great or small, it's all great. We may be capable. Every devotee has certain capabilities, capacity, just like there are many different batteries. One tiny battery will power your watch. Another battery will power electricity to a whole small town or city. They're all batteries. So everyone has certain capacity to share Krishna consciousness with others in different ways. So not to do that is described by Srila Prabhupada as jiva himsa, envy of others. And of course we have lust, who Prabhupada would sometimes refer to, personify as Mr. Lust. And then there's kuti nati, fault finding, and acting more advanced than one actually is. And the last one is puja, wanting worship for oneself. So these are stumbling blocks, anarthas which we have to somehow or other overcome in due course of time. Of course, we're helped by Krishna directly. Internally, we get timely reminders from Lord Paramatma, Super Soul. External manifestation of the Super Soul is Guru and Sadhus who guide us on the path. And I might finish with a delightful sort of Prabhupada couple of pastimes which we only read recently, or I only came across recently. There's so many wonderful remembrances of the early devotees. Some of us, and I haven't seen it for a few years, but in the old, at least one or more of the old Prabhupada Vyasa Puja books, there was definitely a photograph or two of Srila Prabhupada wearing a Western shirt, which many of us used to wear back in the 70s and the 60s, and they were very popular, and they're still worn by persons who farm. And some of you may know the type of shirts I'm talking about. They're often checkered and they come in almost an unlimited variety of patterns, checkered, coloured Western shirts. And companies, I think, like Levi Jeans and Lee Jeans back in the day. I had one. I was really attached to it. I eventually wore it out. It was green and yellow. I can still remember that shirt. I love that shirt. So there's a photo of Prabhupada wearing one such Western shirt. And and years ago when I first saw it, I thought it must be, they say assume nothing, that Prabhupada must have, in those first few years of being in India, worn out his Indian kurtas. So the devotees, the early disciples, they gave Prabhupada shirts. I thought that's plausible. I always thought it was charming. But no. Prabhupada in those early days would quite often share very intimately with his early disciples his longing, and he actually wrote about it in that one of those famous poems he wrote on his way to America, that he was very much longing to again frolic in the groves of Vrindavan, the picnic pastimes with the cowherd boys. So he gave some very strong indications that was, though others may want to suggest otherwise, but Prabhupada definitely gave indications. And actually one of the famous paintings, is it one of, yeah, that's it. No, it's not it, sorry. But there is a famous painting, I'm sure we all know it. Krishna and Balaram, Ramprasad, you know the one, entering back into, I think, Gokul or Nandagram after the day's cow-herding pastimes, with all the cowherd boys, and the gopis are peeking from behind the trees. So anyway, he gave indications like that. Yes. So Himavati Devi Dasi, one of Prabhupada's first lady disciples, she actually made cowherd boy shirts and gave them to Prabhupada. That's how it came about. And Prabhupada wore them. So I always found that delightfully charming. And to add to that, some of us who were around back in the mid-70s will remember there was a big poster on billboards, at least in Melbourne, maybe it went to Adelaide and other states, and was it Wrangler, and it was very clever advertising by Wrangler Clothing Company. They arranged for about half a dozen of our Melbourne brahmacharis to go out on Harinam with instruments, wearing their saffron dhotis, and all of the brahmacharis were wearing saffron kurtas except one, and he was wearing a Wrangler shirt, and the caption said, "I'm not going unless I can wear my Wrangler shirt," wasn't it? I think that was the caption. And when Prabhupada came to Melbourne, he was driven past that, and he chuckled, and he thought that was very good. So I might stop there, everyone. Leave a little time for questions, comments, corrections, if anyone has any. I don't know. Bhakta Mike, 3 Bhakta Mikes had a big day yesterday. I think they might be sleeping off the feast. I don't know if they're available. Otherwise, I can try and repeat, though it's sometimes difficult. But right. Oh, there we go. If anyone has, otherwise we can break early. Anyone? It's not. Ram Prashad, a comment.
I was thinking maybe you could comment where it says here, like, a Vaishnava accepts anything favourable for executing his mission, but foolish persons, not knowing the purpose of such exalted Vaishnavas, indulge in criticising them. There are a few things that Prabhupada was doing when he first came to the West that he got criticised for.
Yeah, actually, I just read in Yogeshwara's book yesterday, the first initiation at 26 2nd Avenue. Prabhupada said, "I am being 80% lenient." And it was only the day after the initiation that Prabhupada put up the rules for the inmates of the ashram, if you like, or the initiated disciples, whether they lived in the temple or not. It doesn't appear that Prabhupada asked, I could be wrong, not like nowadays when aspiring devotees take initiation in ISKCON, they're asked to vow to follow the 4 regulative principles for the rest of their lifetime and chant 16 rounds. But I've read also, if some of those very early initiates, they weren't so clear on the 4 regulative principles. Prabhupada kind of introduced that the day after, it would appear. No meat, fish, and basically the 4 regulative principles, along with no frivolous sports, and so on and so forth. They're there. So 80% lenient, just to get things started. And of course he was criticized back in India by some, vociferously, especially later on in the early 70s when more and more devotees came. Swami Bhaktivedanta is ruining the Hindu religion. So Prabhupada chuckled and said, they should be actually grateful to me. Rather than ruining it, I'm expanding it. I'm making more Hindus. So I was just reading recently also how, and Prabhupada had no hesitation in criticizing caste Brahmins during the time in the 200 years almost of British occupation of India. If anyone left India and went to the West, usually to England for higher education or business opportunities or anywhere outside of India, when they came back, if they had, again, like Shukracharya, family priests advising them in piety, those, in many cases, those family priests would demand that in order to purify themselves from going to the Western world, they had to give their family priests substantial stocks of gold. That was their prayaschitta, or atonement, because they've gone to the lands of the Malechas and the Yavanas. So no doubt they've become implicated in some sinful reactions just by being there. And so in order to atone for that, they would have to give their family priests gold. So, and of course, yes. But, yes, 80% lenient. So that's a little thought on that. Ramprasad, do you want to add something? Oh yes, so much criticism, yes. Even Prabhupada was criticized as the marriage guru because there was no one else to do it until Pradyumna and some of the early disciples became, after a year or so, proficient in performing, after being trained personally by Prabhupada, how to perform marriage rites, and there was no one else to do it. So Prabhupada personally performed those early marriages, even though he was a sannyasi. Sannyasis are not meant to do that. They're generally done by grihasta priests, Brahmins. And the other delightful one is, of course, Prabhupada holding little Saraswati, who he said was the first child born in ISKCON. She was the first child, Shyam Sundar and Malati's daughter. When Shyam Sundar and Malati became Prabhupada's disciples in San Francisco, I think Malati was either pregnant or soon thereafter. So after 9 months, little Saraswati came into the world, very fortunate soul. And Prabhupada, when he was introduced to her for the first time, he held her and he said, take a photograph. And people in India will say, what sort of a Swami is this? Holding a little baby. But Prabhupada didn't care. He was fearless. And so, yeah. Anything else?
You mentioned that a form of violence, from what Prabhupada says, it's not to preach. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Sure. Well,
or how to address it?
Yeah. Well, it's preaching is the essence, books are the basis, utility the principle, and purity the force. So preaching, Prabhupada said many times, I understood this from my Guru Maharaj. He very much likes to preach. So Prabhupada imbibed that same spirit of sharing Krishna consciousness with others. So not to do that is a form of violence. So we all try to do whatever it is, and I'm always making a fuss of the ladies who are sewing such beautiful garlands every day for their lordships, and of course Prabhu and the other devotees that are gardening and growing the flowers. And I told Prabhu yesterday while we were honouring the feast together, it was literally a riot of colour up here. Srila Prabhupada was offered so many gorgeous garlands, and I don't think any of those flowers were bought from outside. I think think they were all grown here. Ladies, can I get a nod from that? Thank you. So all those flowers being grown on New Governor is really wonderful. So that takes a lot of, so just that service. Not everyone is cut out to, is musically inclined to lead wonderful kirtans like we relish from Damodar Prabhu yesterday. No, not all devotees are particularly necessarily inclined to study and give discourses. Everyone has their own unique abilities to cook fabulous feasts for hundreds and hundreds of people. I'm sure all the cooks who do step up to cook those big feasts are going to be absolutely delighted when the new commercial kitchen comes online. So everyone has their talents. So to hold back and not contribute in some way, large or small, that's Prabhupada's definition of jiva himsa, type of violence. A little something. Okay, I think we're out of time. Thanks everyone very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai.